Hi everyone, so today I'm going to be talking about cheating when it comes to video games and kind of explaining how it works and why it can be a bit of a challenge to detect. And the reason I'm doing this video is just because I see a lot of misconceptions about how cheating actually works and people saying things that if they had a basic understanding they'd know that the things they're saying can't be true, or at least can't be true given the current circumstances as of today. So, this video is going to be pretty simplified, so if you work in anti-cheat or something similar or have a computer science background, yes, I'm going to be going over a lot of things. I'm going to make this as simple as I can so people without an IT background can understand. So please don't, start writing in the comments how I don't know this and that. I probably do. I'm probably just not saying it because it isn't helpful for the scope of this video. Okay, so what I'm going to start by doing is let's use the idea of a minimap cheat in a video game. So let's use CS in this example. There's a minimap in CS. How could you get the information of other players on the minimap, ones that you shouldn't be able to see? Well, it all comes from memory, okay? So I'm going to draw just a box here. And if we imagine this as the computer's memory, okay? When your computer turns on, it will load what's called a bootloader. This is the very first point that basically your motherboard says, go here, this is where an operating system is. It will then load up an operating system. So if you imagine here is your bootloader, okay? And then here is something called the kernel, which I'll just represent with a K. That's a fucking retarded K. I'm not very good at writing, not my strong point. Okay, so here is our kernel, here is our boot. And then here is our operating system. So this could be Windows 7, Windows 10, Windows 8, doesn't really matter. I'm going to switch to a finer pen here. So, how do we cheat? Well, on top of this operating system, in memory, which this isn't exactly how it's represented, but it will work for this use case. The game runs on your operating system, okay? So let's say this is CSGO. Okay? And this uses a chunk of memory, let's just say this chunk. In this chunk is everything about the game, okay? Like everything required in the program, the execution of code for the game. So that will be 3D shapes, where they are, where the textures are, where players are, where sound is. Everything is loaded into memory. Therefore, if you can pull what you want out of memory, you can basically get whatever information you want. So the way a basic cheat would work is you would, at kind of the operating system level, you would write a sort of cheat in user space. Of course, this pen's fucked. So let's put this cheat here that can read into CSGO and read out, let's say, the coordinates of all of the players. This cheat could then come back on top of CSGO and use what's called a DX-D39 or DirectX overlay here, just like how Discord has an overlay, to display this cheaters minimap in this example. So this is our cheaters minimap. Okay, so the question is, how do we stop this? Well, because this cheat exists in operating system space, you could have an anti-cheat in operating system space, effectively. So let's just make this our anti-cheat. And it could look around memory, bearing in mind it's important that this can only access what's above it. So this operating system, this anti-cheat can look at CSGO and all the memory it's using. It can look at this overlay in memory. But it can't look down into kernel space, and it definitely can't look down into kind of the bootloader. So, we've got this anti-cheat, and it will scan around in memory, and every cheat or thing running in memory might have a signature. So this has a signature. Let's say the signature of this is A, B. Now this will be done in kind of an algorithmic fashion, this signature, so no signature can be the same. You can't mistake not very easily anyway, unless you're completely incompetent at writing anti-cheat. You can't easily mistake, Microsoft Excel for a cheat. So this is our AB signature. How will the anti-cheat developer get this? They'll download the cheat, they'll work out what its signature is, and then they'll add it to their list of anti-cheat software. And then this will look in this OS part of memory that it has access to for this AB, and it will go, oh, there's an AB running in this space of memory. Let us double check that, send it off for some analysis. Oh, okay, he's cheating. Oh, okay, yep, he's running this cheat, and then they'll send it off to the servers at the game studio, for example, and that person will get banned. Now, we spoke about how this anti-cheat here cannot access what's below it. Now, what exists in the kernel space? Well, the kernel, there's lots of things. One of the main things is what's called drivers. This is at a very low level how your video card works, how your human interface device works, or as you would know it, a mouse, how every single piece of hardware you connect functions. So, if you can write a driver, then this anti-cheat can't see this part of memory, therefore it can't detect its signature. So what cheat developers started doing is they were like, okay, well, I'm going to write a driver then. So they put their cheat here. So let's put KC here for their kernel cheat. And this can still happily go up here and extract all this information from the user and abstract it up as well. And now this anti-cheat can't see it. So this is where kernel level anti-cheat comes in, that term. So this means this is an anti-cheat that lives in the kernel space. So if we put our kernel level anti-cheat here, KLA, this can now happily read this part of memory that would normally be out of bounds or protected from above in the operating system, and they can then analyze this cheat. Okay, so now we've successfully shown kind of how kernel level anti-cheat works. So the thing with kernel cheats is, in order to operate in the kernel, at least for Windows, you need a signed driver, signed by Microsoft. This costs an awful lot of money, and you can't just turn off driver signing, because every anti-cheat, face it, easy anti-cheat, BattleEye, for example, they will all see you've got driver signing turned off, basically where you don't care whether it was signed by Microsoft or a trusted party, and they'll go, oh, well, that means he can write whatever driver he wants, so you're not doing that. But when you're a company making millions from cheats, you can go pay to get your driver signed, so it's then down to the kernel level anti-cheat existing in kernel space to look after detecting this. The methods of actually detecting a kernel space are a little bit more complicated than the simple signatures, but again, I'm keeping this video fairly simple, so we're going to gloss over that here. But they can detect in kernel space this cheat with the right technology and investigation. Okay. There's another even simpler way, by the way, that you can detect these cheats, which is if they've got a cheater's minimap overlaid as an overlay, you could just have a screenshot utility on top, like CS, like ESCA did for a while, and you could just take a screenshot and then you'll see their cheater's minimap, and then you have photographic evidence they cheated, you can ban them, and yeah, that's kind of what morons do, I guess. So now you might think, oh, brilliant, no one can cheat because as long as we have a kernel level anti-cheat, then it's all good and they can detect the cheat in the kernel space. Well, you'd think that. But unfortunately, there's some technologies around that have been used for reasons that they weren't designed for, I guess. So there's this technology called DMA. Now, what is DMA? DMA is direct memory access. Now, if we think about the cheat, all the information needed exists in memory, okay? So we know it's in this block of CSGO memory. Then if we have direct memory access, then we can just pull out all this information and abstract it somewhere else. This was originally designed, by the way, for things mostly in a data center. It's coming to Windows now. It's in Windows Workstation, for example. You might have a network card What the fuck is that? That is not an N. That's now a W. Okay, this is a network card. So you might have a network card, and this will go ahead and normally would go through our CPU. Again, this is simplified, and then across to a hard drive. Okay, so you copy something off, it goes to the CPU, actually memory as well, memory isn't there, and then to the network card. But with DMA, you can just go directly, effectively, from the network card straight to the hard drive, and this cuts out all of this processing time in the middle and makes things faster. This is what allows fast transfer speeds over other methods than gigabit, like InfiniBand, fiber optic, even direct PCI Express to PCI Express connectivity, like some of the stuff a company called Liquid is doing. So if we have DMA, or direct memory access, we can read this information out. Now remember how we spoke about how if the anti-cheat lives in the OS space, and the cheat lives in OS space, it can read it, and if it's a kernel level anti-cheat, it can read the cheat if it's put in kernel level space. Well, what if we don't put the cheat on the same computer? So, if we have DMA, this direct memory access, which is normally achieved for an add-in card, like PCI Express supports direct memory access. So this is our memory here, okay? As we've already said. Well, now we're going to use DMA to read this memory, and we're going to take this information and we're going to put it into a little box of tricks. And let's just say this has a USB port on it, and we're going to plug this into another computer. Okay, on this computer over here, we now have a web page that shows this minimap. Okay, so this web page is showing the minimap with all the positions, because what it's doing is the computer has this USB box connected to it. This USB box goes over to a PCI Express card. This allows DMA, so direct memory access, meaning they can read whatever they want in and out of memory. Now here's the bad part. Because this anti-cheat can't detect the signature, and there is no cheat running in this memory, there's just CSGO. You know, you install nothing on this system, you just run CSGO. This can just come in, it can grab the minimap info in this case, straight out. This minimap, obviously, info exists in memory. It could be pulled straight out via DMA to another computer. This anti-cheat has absolutely zero idea that a PCI Express card is reading from memory the minimap information. And it gets worse because, unfortunately, not only is DMA an issue, as in DMA was designed for, you know, speeding up access to things, there are also weird other kind of idiosyncrasies and problems that allow you to read from memory without anti-cheat in the kernel space or the operating system space knowing. A good example of this is the Intel Management Engine, which is basically a very, very low level. We're talking before boot, right, in memory. We're talking literally outside of system memory here. We're talking like a little chip. So this chip can effectively read the memory. And what was really dumb about this is they actually managed, there was an exploit in this that effectively allowed you over your Ethernet to gain access to this Intel Management Platform chip and read memory. So then you could have another laptop here that could then read all of this data through this little chip on your motherboard, or I'm not actually sure, because obviously we don't necessarily have Northbridge and Southbridge anymore. It could be on your CPU. I don't actually know where the Intel Management Engine lives off the top of my head. I'd have to go look at the data sheets for everything. But this has very fast access to memory, and because this chip in some business machines basically was given internet access, because now some computers, even when they're off, they have basic TCP/IP stack access, you could then just connect directly to this chip and read memory. And again, it has no idea. And in that case, you don't even have to buy this USB box that goes to a PCI card. Now, you might think, oh, that's really bad. And Intel patched this, and that's really good. But if you're a cheater, are you really going to update your management engine if you know it's got a vulnerability in it that allows you to cheat? Probably not, unless you're a moron. But most cheaters are morons, so there you go. Now, okay, so you might think, oh, but I've read that hardware cheats have been detected. You're right, they have, and here's why. So you've got this, our block of memory again, our blocks, boot, kernel. That's not a K again. I fucking suck at writing. Operating system space. Okay, now we're saying that we're going to use a PCI card here to gain us our DMA over. Now, when a PCI card, this PCI card would be connected via, USB box to a laptop. Now, what you might then say is, how do they know? Well, when you connect a PCI Express device, let's say you just bought a brand new shiny sound card. In fact, no one buys sound cards anymore because it's not 2004. But back in 2004, imagine this. You bought your sick new shiny sound card and you can't wait to, boot up some mental sound processing where you can hear footsteps all around you. Well, if you go into Device Manager, you'll see that sound card. And that's because of something called the PCI Venn ID. And there's also another ID that I can't remember the name of. But there's two descriptors, that's what I can remember, so we'll just call this like 2. And these two descriptors tell the computer, or in this case the kernel, because these interact in the kernel space, what's plugged in. It goes, oh, it's a sound card. So then it can report, yes, you're a sound card. Cool, I'm going to load this driver. Now, let's imagine this thing has the PCI Venn ID and manufacturing information of a cheat. Well, if you've got kernel level anti-cheat, and I'm pretty sure actually within Windows, within user space, you could still access this, you could just come over, read this PCI Venn ID and go, oh, well, he's got a cheater card in there. Okay, we're going to ban him. In a lot of cases, this card, if I remember correctly, there was one called PCI Screamer, for example. And what people were doing was they were using this to read and write to memory. Let me reset my watch, in ways to obviously extract info. And the anti-cheat at the kernel level, could be the operating system level, as I've said, I don't know off the top of my head, would then read this device and go, oh, he's got a cheater card, let's ban him. Well, good news, you don't have to say you're this. You don't have to say you're a PCI Screamer, which everyone knew was for cheating. You, through this USB interface, can program these PCI Venn IDs to be whatever you want. So, although it might look a bit suspicious, you could, in theory, put in what's a really good example? You could put in a fax modem. You could say, oh, I want this PCI Venn ID to be a fax modem. Then the anti-cheat comes out, it has a look and goes, okay, yeah, no PCI Screamer, he's running a fax modem. And that is where you can spoof the PCI Venn IDs to enable you to read the memory without kernel level anti-cheat being aware. As well as, remember, you can use this Intel management platform to do the same thing because of Intel's security flaw. So, this can now read in and out of memory, give you your minimap info. And to be fair, that's just a start. You have all of the 3D data in memory to composite whatever you wish. So for example, in Arma 2, there was a hook in user space, I believe, not in the kernel, that allowed you to hook into the sound engine effectively. And because in the sound engine, here you are playing Arma 2, all happy. And you see a guy, you hear a guy behind you, right? Now, you would hear that kind of spaced out using the driver and through the game engine into your headset. But because this actually contained full 3D space, this sound, because the Arma 2 sound was so precise, both X, Y, and Z, and I forgot the other one, See how much of an expert I am. You could effectively read out of memory this data, because this wasn't being analysed by anti-cheats or protected very well, and get all of this 3D data of where players were. Then you could build a minimap from this 3D data to show you where people were. So you might hear a really vague footstep. We're talking completely inaudible over here. Right? But because this was in 3D space, they could then, or in 2D space, they could then plot this onto a minimap. Now, we spoke a lot here about minimaps. The same works for sound ESP, beeping when an enemy is behind you. And there are even some very clever people who will actually manipulate memory, or they will read the memory. In this case, so they will read the memory. So let's just... You know all about the kernel stuff by now, so I really don't have to go over this. They'll read the memory, and in here is like the current crosshair position in 3D space. And then they can, read this out via whatever means. We've talked about it, let's say DMA. And then they can use something like an Arduino or any other kind of microcontroller, however they wish to design it, to emulate a human interface device. And they can do all of the 3D maths to basically work out, okay, well, his crosshair is here, there is a player over here in 3D space, we know the relation between the two, therefore this external box here that's got all of this 3D space info can then trigger a virtual mouse to move and make these two connect, so this shoots this. And then the best thing is, if you're doing this through DMA or through the Intel method, and completely undetected, and then you're just emulating a mouse. So as far as the anti-cheats are aware, you've just got a mouse plugged in. They're just like, oh, well, he's just using a mouse. But this mouse is magic, because this mouse has a small computer behind it, and all of the 3D data from memory to be able to move your mouse exactly to the point and shoot them. And they can't read that in kernel space, because you're doing it through the mouse. And you can do things like you've all heard of low FOV aimbots, so like you might be a tiny bit off, not the full bit, and then smoothing, and you could do all of the mathematics to make the aim look natural. And they can't tell anything. So you're probably thinking, well, we're absolutely fucked. They could read the memory using the Intel thing, they could use all of the 3D space info, and they could, put that into an Arduino or some other microcontroller and control a mouse. Even kernel-level anti-cheat will not detect this. Yep. You're pretty much right. There are some things that very clever people at companies like Riot and Vanguard are doing to look more at behavior analysis using things, I'm assuming, although I don't know because I don't work at Riot, like neural networks to analyze, loads of people and pick out discrepancies, and also they can kind of, still in kernel space, memory can like effectively misbehave when you edit it from an external source, but if you're reading it, it could be a lot harder, but it's still not impossible. There are some research papers for preventing DMA attacks, but a lot of them were very early, and there's not really a reason. Like, why would the scientific community look into the cheating of video games? They don't give a shit about video games. So that just leaves the people over at Riot, ESCA, to look at stuff. And to be fair, Riot are doing their very best. It's really not as simple, especially when you have people like Intel just giving people access to memory in a read-only, in a read way off to an external device. And then you do your calculations through a human interface device. So, like I said, the only way you can really work that out is work out if the behavior of the mouse is human-like. And the only way you know whether something is human-like is to have enough data of how humans interact. And then that gets tricky because you don't know if the data you're analysing is actually humans or if it's cheaters, etc., etc. So the whole reason I made this video is I really want you to understand that these anti-cheats that you think are amazing, they are pretty good. They will catch the absolute moron who just has a cheat in user space downloaded off unknown cheats. They'll even catch a cheat in kernel space. And they'll even catch when people buy a PCI Screamer and plug it into their PC. Where they struggle is when they plug in a PCI Screamer, make it become a legit sound card, and then, or even worse, they read it from the Intel management engine. And then, once you've read that, you can do whatever you want using an Arduino, because that's completely out of memory. And the anti-cheat can only read memory. So, I really hope that kind of explained how cheats work. It was kind of a very brief kind of glance over the subject, and to be clear, my background is not in cheats at all. I've never written a cheat. I don't cheat. As you can tell, I kind of hate cheats. The I know about this stuff because I know about computers, and it really isn't rocket science to kind of, at least on this basic scale, work out how they would cheat, how they would read this stuff, and gain an advantage. I guess the only way I could see they fix it is if they find a proper way to basically sandbox memory, and not allow external reading or manipulation of memory. But that adds a whole bunch of overhead into it, and it's, you know, then someone finds a bypass to get into your sandbox, and how do you get a sandbox that's fast enough, and etc, etc. So the problem really isn't simple, and there will be people cheating for a long time, and it's not easy to stop. But I just want everyone to understand that these anti-cheats aren't magic. They're very good, and they have a lot of technology under them that I haven't even spoke about in this this video. But you know, they can only do so much. They're constrained by what they have access to in memory, and if something can read memory without any of this in the stack being aware, they're helpless. So if you found this video useful, you know, I don't know, give a comment. You can subscribe if you want. Not sure I'll ever post anything like this again. I just got rather pissed off at hearing someone talk about something they didn't understand, so I thought I would make a little video. So thank you very much. Fucking can't speak now. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you guys all have a good day, and I'll catch you later.